Another episode of Grassroots Racer. Tonight we're going live with four of our best ex-Grassroots Racers drivers who raced at the Bathurst 1000, not in the supercar, but in the support categories. So tonight we welcome Clay Richards, Dylan Thomas, Lachlan, Mineeff, and Luke King. So how are you guys tonight?
Yeah, good, Ayrton. Yeah, thanks for having us.
So we'll start off with Clay Richards. You had a pretty good weekend, I'm guessing. There was a couple sort of scary moments in there. But firstly, how do you feel after such a huge weekend at because, at one stage after S&P, maybe you thought you weren't going to get on track?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We obviously had a big accident at Sydney Motorsport Park a couple of rounds ago. And we spent basically every night for the past 6 weeks trying to repair the car. And there was a little while there where we thought, we might not make it to Bathurst just because how big the damage was. But no, it was great in the end. We pulled through. My weekend was great. It's just great to be able to race with fans, especially at Bathurst as well. We had a little drama in qualifying, which really held us back for the whole weekend. A camshaft position sensor was the plug ended up being broken from the accident in Sydney Motorsport Park. It was just something we missed. So we were losing, I think, 2 seconds a lap in qualifying. So we started a fair way back than I would have hoped. But throughout the weekend, we started to show a fair bit of pace throughout the races, which I was happy about. So, yeah, it's good signs to come for next year.
Yeah, and your dad was also racing in it. So was there a bit of a competitive nature between you two?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually made a bet. So whoever finished ahead of each other on overall points, the loser would have to shout them KFC. But unfortunately, I was the one who had to shout. So yeah.
So we also got Dylan here. We'll be back in a sec to you, Clay. We got Dylan here.
Yeah.
It was great to speak to you. You had a pretty good weekend. You were in the top 10 in all 3 races. How did it go from your perspective?
As I was just chatting to Clay prior to coming on with you, drivers are never happy. So I don't think anybody on here sitting aiming for a top 10. But I mean, for us, we jumped in late this season into the Trans Am. So we've effectively done 1 test day. And so most of our testing is at race meetings. So, we chucked a brand new setup in for qualifying, which was probably the right direction. We've probably got it right about 40% of the time this year. So it was good that we got it right in qualifying. Probably didn't maximise the lap as much as we would have liked. My rolling starts have been my biggest problem. So I think I need to have my car come on a little bit earlier in the race for the rolling start. But all in all, it was a positive weekend. I did touch the grass coming into the final corner in the second race, which made me choose the escape road rather than the sand trap. Mainly because I didn't want to do a Luke King and try and clean the car full of gravel, because that's never ideal. I'm just picking on Lukey because I can see him on the screen there. And so we took the escape road. That dropped us back a fair bit. We fell back to like 12th or 13th and then back up to 9th. So not ideal, but, the positive is we found a good direction with the car, which, going into next year is certainly going to put us in a better stead.
Yeah. Well, you had a great weekend. And Luke, you had a very unlucky weekend ever since qualifying. So do you want to tell us a bit about how you went and, how much carnage there was, considering you were trying to fight for a championship there?
Yeah, it was disappointing to say the least. I think the end result's not what we wanted. We've sort of sat through this whole COVID break, second in the TCR series, and have sat there for most of the year, really. So to lose it in the final rounds, pretty upsetting. But all in all, like we were really privileged this weekend to have the young Wally Story come on board and engineer us out of retirement. So that was pretty cool. That was a favour that Bridie called in for us, and Wally knew my dad from working together back in the day, building engines and stuff out in Greenacre. So it was cool. There was a lot of reminiscing happening, and Wally has kind of restored my faith in some people in motorsport. Like he's probably the most experienced bloke on the grid and one of the most genuine guys that just doesn't have an ego at all. So very easy to work with. So it was good to have him on board. And he was certainly on top of anything. He doesn't miss a trick for one of the older guys. And when I had that brake failure in qualifying, it wasn't actually a brake failure. I thought it was that, but I've like pulled up in the gravel trap, and then Wally's come over the radio about 15 seconds later and said, "Oh, Luke, you're not actually going to believe it, but the tire's spinning on the rim." And sure enough, you see the slow-mo footage, and both my front wheels are locked and the tires are spinning at road speed on the actual bead of the rim. And the NPC boys, it probably took them a good 2 hours to clean the car. There was just like black tar and rubber all up the side of the car. So it was pretty unique situation. I definitely had to clean my undies out after that one. Pulling the handbrake at 200 Ks as I was about to exit the chase was not how I pictured Q2 going for us, because we're actually up on our lap, which is why I was so committed, like going into the chase. So we're actually on that lap pretty much due to match Chaz's times, which would have put us in like the top five. So it was disappointing. And then we realized after race one that in that chase shunt, we actually snapped off the rear roll bar support. So we did all of race one without a rear roll bar. So to finish P7 in that was probably a pretty good result. So, yeah, I don't know how much further you want me to go, but race two didn't go much better.
That was a bit controversial, considering, you were really trying to fight with Chaz, and then it just all went downhill. Now, over to Lachlan, in your own words, in your Instagram post, you said you had a roller coaster of a weekend. Can you tell us some more about the ups and downs of what happened?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here on the show. And it was obviously our first time at Bathurst in TCR, and obviously missed the Easter event, Easter TCR event, which kind of put us on the back foot a bit. But look, I think all in all, we finished Bathurst with a straight car and no damage, and learnt so much over the weekend. The results were pretty good. Obviously, in qualifying, just first time on a proper green tire at Bathurst was pretty difficult. So just made it through qualifying, and obviously had our focus in later on the weekend. And then race one was good. Our pace was okay. We first time running the longer distance races in TCR, and we probably set our car up to come on later in the race, but that was probably just a bit too late. So obviously and then later in the race, we had a tire delaminate, which was a bit unfortunate, a bit common across the weekend. Weren't exactly sure of the cause, but it was the outside front tire, so the most loaded tire on the car at Bathurst, the right front. So that was a bit unfortunate. Obviously, learned a little bit from there and changed our ideology into race two, and then race two was fantastic. Obviously, it was the hottest race of the weekend. So your load on your tires is going to be the highest. And we just pushed hard in the first few laps, which was good, and then moved our way from 12th and ended up finishing 6th in the race, which was really good. We were really happy with that result. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that we brought the tyre home and made the checkered flag, which we did. And unfortunately, we had our dash fail in about 4 laps in, so that was pretty difficult. The car's being paddle shift. The screen froze over, and I didn't know what gear I was in. I had no shift lights, and most importantly, I didn't really know my engine temperature. So you see a lot of cars dropping off the track, and I wasn't really sure whether that was going to be tyre or engines overheating. So from then, just conserved the car and drove the best I could with the equipment we had, and it all paid off. Obviously, it's a pretty cool opportunity to be racing Chris Mees, who was racing in TCR this weekend, and he's very, very good in GT equipment. So let's go wheel to wheel with him, and he has the outright lap record at Bathurst. It was a pretty cool opportunity, just made the most of it. And then race 3 was a bit unfortunate. I just totally muffed the start, which was totally my fault. And the track position from there was pretty tough. We're really happy with our sector times across the top. Probably had kind of the fifth fastest sector time across the top. But unfortunately, with the BOP of the Volkswagen, meant we lacked a little bit of top line, straight line speed, which at Bathurst is so important. And you'd make gains across the top, and then you would be gapped down the straight. So we'll work on that. There's a couple of little things we can do to get that sorted for next rounds, next season, and go from there. But yeah, obviously, fantastic to have the opportunity to race at Bathurst in TCR and the second times across the top. Within a second and a half, 2 seconds of the supercars. So that's a pretty cool opportunity to have that, and just really thankful to all my sponsors and the people in our team that make it happen, and looking forward to next year.
Yeah, best of luck next year. I just noticed over the TCRs, it looks like a lot of you and Luke had a lot of pace at some points, but you just because the track is a little tight, you won't be able to pass through the corners, and it's a bit hard on the straight sometimes because some of the cars, like you and Luke, I think are a little underpowered compared to the rest. So did you guys find it tricky?
Yeah, look, I think it just is what it is. I guess some circuits that we go to, our golf will be a lot better than some of the others. And then you got the opposite when go to the fast tracks like Bathurst and things like that. But it is what it is. I think it keeps the racing up front unpredictable, and obviously means that at the right circuit, any time throughout the year, anyone's got a good chance of winning. So look, I think it's good in that aspect, but it's a bit tough to swallow in when it doesn't go your way.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think Lockie's right. Like each round, you almost get your turn in a way where the balance of power swings your way, but it is frustrating because the way that the weight ballast works for TCR in Australia is they calculate it off your previous qualifying. So there were certain cars, obviously, that were quite quick across the weekend that had actually DNF'd the last qualifying session, but actually held really good pace across the races. So they actually weren't taken into account for the BOP for Bathurst. So there were cars there that had really good ECU and no weight, and were able to kind of pull out some pretty unbelievable lap times considering. So it is frustrating because you kind of want everyone to be bunched up in a pack. I think the racing was still good from what I've seen so far. I haven't watched all the races, but I think it would make more sense to have a BOP adjustment after quali and try and peg some of the front cars back to the mid pack. Would make a bit more sense because obviously there's no track calculation with how they do the BOP. So it can be, sometimes they get it bang on and other times it's way out of whack. And Bathurst is obviously quite a specific circuit when you're talking about horsepower, because it's not just coming down Conrod, it's pulling yourself up the hill as well. So hopefully they can work on that for next year.
Yeah. So TCR boys had a bit of unlucky racing this weekend, but if we go back to Clay, in race 3, you and your dad did really well to avoid that accident that happened pretty early in the race. In a situation like that, how do you keep your cool and avoid the crash?
Oh, look, what I usually do, especially on the first lap, because the Toyota races, they're a little bit known for first lap accidents. So I'm always looking ahead. Looking 5 cars, or we're trying to look 5 cars ahead to see what's going on. We'll take the accident in race 2, for example, where the race was called off because there was a big shunt at the top of the mountain. But so I just looked ahead and I saw all this debris and parts flying everywhere. And then that's when you think, okay, well, there's an accident going on, so I need to slow down here and try and pick a place where there isn't any action, if that makes sense. But also you're wary of the cars behind as well, not running into the back of you as well. So sometimes you can see that stuff, but also in Sydney as well. When we had our accident, they can sometimes pop out of nowhere, these crashes. So yeah, look, I'd try my best to look ahead of me as much as I can for any accidents like that.
Yeah, and what would you say was your highlight of the weekend, and what are we going to see in 2022 with Clay Richards?
I think the highlight for me was probably in race 3. We had some really good pace in race 3, and I actually did my personal best lap in my personal best time in race 3, and I was in traffic as well, and it was around sort of top 10 fastest for the race. So that was something I was really, really happy about, and to do it in traffic as well when you can go a bit faster is something pretty satisfying, and it's also good signs for next year as well. So yeah, and like I said before, like over the course of the weekend we were quite fast, but just unfortunately we were stuck at the back for the races. So that's how it is, but yeah, it's good signs for next year.
Yeah. And question for Dylan, what's the best part of the track for the TA2 cars?
Well, they've got horsepower, so the straights are pretty good for the cars, but for the drivers, always the top of the mountain. I mean, I particularly like going Reed Park, Reed Park, the tree, and McPhillamy and into Skyline. I particularly like that section. My car probably wasn't the best over Skyline and into the Dipper. Probably I sort of felt a little bit that, or I saw a little bit in the data later on that I was using a little bit of gear selection points from the Evo, because I've done a lot of laps in the Evo around Bathurst. So my gear selection points were probably wrong in that area of the track, and so I was able to sort of correct that a little bit later on, and so that probably made it a little bit looser coming, particularly as you come over Skyline and you come into the S's there, the car was a little bit looser, and that was probably as a result of not using the gear to sort of, bit of gear braking, a bit of engine braking. So yeah.
You saying, Dylan, that you were too high or too low in the gear?
I was too high. So in fact, Timmy Brooks now put a video up. So I put a video up as well in the weekend. And if you watch my video as I come over, like I don't gear down till after I come over Skyline. So effectively the car gets a little bit loose because there's no engine brake coming over. Whereas if you watch Brooks's video, he gears down just before he goes over. So as he does that first bit of the drop, the engine braking is doing a little bit of that, a bit more stability for the car. So.
And then does he grab a bit of throttle like once he's back in third? Because I remember I used to do that in the 86, just give it heaps of throttle on the way into the start of the S's there.
I don't think he's grabbing throttle at that point, but as you do the little right just before the Dipper, there's a little blip on the throttle at that point. Yeah. And the other thing that I saw as well is that as you come out of the Dipper, in the Evo, I think we're in second, so I'd grab third pretty much at the gutter on the right there. Whereas in these, you grab it further around. So I was probably short shifting coming out as well, which is probably costing a little bit. Which in race 1 meant that Eden Thornborough, who I had a massive battle with, was able to dive me a number of times into the elbow. So that was costing me a little bit. So when I went searching why I was getting dived so easily, that was one of the things we identified. So, Ayrton, I've got a question for Clay, if I may.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Go for it.
So, Clay, I've got a particular desire that I would love to have a race, an endurance race with my father. And my son is now 10 and he's pretty competitive in motocross. And I assume one day he's going to, play with cars. Who knows? Have you and your father and the great Jimmy had a discussion about getting the three of you in a 6-hour or something pretty cool? Because how cool would that be, being 3 generations? Because it's something that I would like to do with my family. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be. I think we when was it? A little while ago, Dad and I thought about doing the 6 hour for next year, but we're not sure if we'll do it or not. But I don't for Grandpa. I'll try and convince him for sure, but I don't think he's up for it anymore. But
what about like a Wakefield 300, something that's got no? Because that's the only way I'd get my dad to do it, is something that's got no, and probably just chuck him in for 5 laps. But just something, that would be cool, I reckon, for me, my dad, and my son to do. I don't know. I just, particularly with your family heritage, it would be something pretty cool to see the 3 of you in a car as well. From a personal standpoint.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's an awesome. That'd be an awesome thing to do. But I'm not sure if Grandpa will be up for it, but we'll try and convince him for sure.
You're not going to pay. You got to pay him too much to get in there.
Yeah, I know. That's yeah, exactly right.
Luke and Lockie, how would you two feel about sharing a car with your father at a Bathurst event?
I'll let Lockie go first.
Yeah, so my dad's done a bit of dirt track speedway racing, but definitely nothing circuit racing. Obviously it'd be cool. Not sure if that'd be down for it, but we'll have to do some testing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to. My dad, unfortunately, has never had the chance to race. He's worked on plenty of Bathurst winning race cars and built engines for a lot of those touring car teams from back in the day, even Jimmy Richards' day. So I think he would love to do it, but it'd be the same as Lockie. We'd have to probably coach him up a little bit. I've actually, when I used to do a lot of driver coaching, I've had him out to the track, and we've done some drives together. He actually has driven around Bathurst before, and he's done Eastern Creek in like a V8 race style car. But he, like a lot of people who haven't driven race cars a lot, have a tendency to take their foot off the brake pedal, to blip the throttle and then get back on the brake again. I think that's a bit of street racer spec that he's got going on, which doesn't inspire a hell of a lot of confidence from the passenger seat. So yeah, we'd have to try and train him up a bit, I reckon.
So definitely take a lot of training. I'd love to do a Bathurst event with my dad. I just think he'd tell me to go faster though. Like he'd say you're not going fast enough. So it's one of those things that, I don't know, he'd probably try and train me, actually. I don't think I'd be the one training him. He'd be convincing me to try and go quicker and stuff like that. But Luke, you had a crash in one of the, I think it was the last race. Race 2. Do you think you can work on your starts a little bit? Is that where your weak point is, do you think, at the moment?
Yeah, the starts have been difficult in the TCR because they don't have a lot of feel to them. They're in a rear-wheel drive car. You kind of have a bit of weight transfer, and you can kind of feel some squat in the rear. But in a front-wheel drive, it kind of just picks up and sort of goes. And there's like a bit of, Lockie runs the same as us, even though he's in a Volkswagen. They've got the same running gear, and it's got a limiter button on it. It's not launch control, but it basically just goes, you preset it and it bangs off a certain limiter. So if you want to set it to like $4,500 or whatever, it kind of wheel spins up to that point and it bounces off the limiter a couple of times and then you let it go. And just getting that process right has been quite difficult for me. And I go a lot off like sound for my starts, and we've never had a problem with starts when I raced Formula Ford or 86s or anything like that. But getting the starts right and not having, like, you can actually hear more TCR cars around you than you can hear your own car a lot of the time. So there's a bit to sort of manage in there. And yeah, you're not wrong. My first 2 starts were probably the worst 2 starts of my life. So over the season, we have got it right, but it's been difficult to try and replicate it. And whether that's tire temp on the warm up lap or how we prep the car, it's difficult. So I think race 3 was a little bit better, but definitely race 2 we probably shouldn't have been back where we were off the front row. we should have made the most of that, and that was the reason we kind of got boxed in and ended up getting punted off at turn 1. So yeah, absolutely not ideal. If we had to finish that race in 20th, we would have taken 3rd for the championship, which would have been better than where we ended up. So it was my heart sank when I drove back up Mountain Straight and realised that the rear upright was busted in half and the thing was trying to turn me around in a straight line. I knew we weren't going to finish. So it was that was our first DNF of the year, and it really hurt us.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw it. I was like, Luke, you've been a bit unlucky this weekend. But it all started, with the start off the line, because I think it was Caruso got an amazing start. But,
I think it was Aaron Cameron on my outside, actually. So it was me and Dylan O'Keefe off the front row, and then we had I think it was Brad Shields, Bargs behind us. So Shieldsy actually was the one that jumped me and ended up getting in front. So we're sitting P3 on the way in, and then Aaron was on my very outside. And from my perspective, Shieldsy was kind of moving across a bit, and then I've kind of moved as well, and that's been probably just enough to force Aaron a little bit wide onto the grass, and then he's had a bit of a moment and speared us, and then my arse end ended up half a meter in the air, and it was pretty much all over. You can't really control much when you're midair, so yeah, it was a bit of a bummer, but I mean, you get upset about it at the time, but then you watch it back and you realize there's probably not much that you could have done. So it's you just got to accept it as racing, unfortunately.
Yeah. And another thing was, you and Lockie both had tire issues. Did any of you guys know what was sort of causing it? Was it just the track, or was there something on the track that people had been hitting?
I don't. Well, we didn't have any major tire delamination issues across the weekend. The Audis were quite good on tires across the whole race. We obviously had that weird, like, whatever you want to call it, fitting issue in qualifying. But yeah, both myself, Chris, and Chaz were decent on tires across the weekend. I think a lot of people were trying to run lower pressures. And the big high load sections, like coming into the grate, was creasing the wall of the tire and causing it to kind of split and then completely delaminate the whole carcass of the tire. So we were really taking our time on the warm-up laps and not trying to load the tire up too much, and pressuring them appropriately as well. So I don't know what Lockie's side of the deal was. I didn't realize you delaminated a tire, Lockie.
Yeah, we did in the first race. We weren't exactly sure of the cause. On the opening lap, we had a slight under rotation on the outside front into the chase, which probably didn't help our cause. It wasn't a full lockup. The tire wasn't going slower than it should be if it was, had full contact with the road. So that may have possibly done a bit of damage, and I guess the being on the outlap didn't help. But we had a similar moment in race 2, and we didn't have a single issue. And we looked at the tires after the race, and they're in really, really good condition. So yeah, look, not 100% sure what the cause was with ours. But yeah, look, I think we can't be too disheartened because it was quite a common issue throughout the weekend, and I think there was no issue with our pressures or any of our alignments or things like that. So yeah, look, we'll just put it down to chance and go from there. But yeah, a little bit odd.
Yeah. Lockie and Clay, did you guys have any issues, like not that obviously ended your race, but any issues with the tyres after the race that you noticed? Well, that took a lot of deg out of it.
Our car was actually, the condition of tyres were actually really, really quite good. Obviously in TCR, you're not really wearing your rear tyres, so the rears were looking really good after the races, and so were the fronts as well. So after obviously races 2 and 3, so yeah, bit of an odd one that first race, but considering after the first race we didn't really change our pressures or alignments even after the failure. We'll just kind of put that one to chance, and yeah, bit of an odd one, but we'll all the rest of the weekend seemed fine.
What about you, Clay and Dylan? Did you guys have any sort of problems with the tyres that, weren't long-term, but?
No, look, obviously the 86 is a lot less powerful than the TCR cars, and we also run a grooved tyre as well, unlike the TCRs, which run a slick. So the good thing with the 86s are because they're not that powerful. You don't use a lot of your tyre. Like you'd use. So we use a set from qualifying till the end of the weekend, and you can use them for another test day as well. So yeah, we've got pretty good tyres, but we never had any dramas with tyres over the weekend.
Yeah, no, neither. Bathurst is not a venue that generally wears tyres. So Bathurst is. Hang on, I thought I was still muted. So Bathurst is not a place that wears tyres. Sydney Motorsport parked the round before. I think everybody was complaining about tyres a lot, but at Bathurst, tyres were fine. The Trans Ams are a cross-ply tyre, so you do have to be very conscious about tyre temperature, because as soon as you start getting either the pressures or the temperatures too high, the rear of the car moves around a lot in the Trans Am, and so we had a little bit of that in race one. We probably were a little bit on the high side. So the car was good for the first 5, 6, 7 laps, and we did that 16-lap race, 100K race. So the second half of the race, she was a bit loosey-goosey. But and then the next race, we obviously dropped the pressures down, and she was a bit understeery off the start because we hadn't got the temps up, the pressures up. So and race 3 was good, so we learned eventually. So we had to play with pressures, but no tyre problems.
Well, that's good to hear from you two. Just a quick question for everyone. Was it, good being a support category for the V8s? Was it exciting at all?
I'll jump in here if that's all right. Obviously, first time for TCR, really in the series history that it was a support category. Normally, running on its own is good. I think, obviously, any chance you can be at Bathurst is fantastic, and obviously was only possible at the end of the year by supporting supercars. I think going to that event is fantastic, and the amount of the crowd and the TV is really fantastic. A little bit disappointing that we had some races cut short, either due to safety car or at the end of the weekend, just the laps were reduced because of the time that were allocated to race. You look at the event was marketed as the TCR Bathurst 400, which was 3 21-lap races. And I think throughout the weekend, the races only went 17, 15 and 16 laps, which was a bit unfortunate. Obviously, you plan for the longer races, and that would have been really good. And then even if you look at the allocated time at the start of the weekend, it was 21 laps or about 47 minutes. And on our calculations, we weren't even able to do 21 laps in that 47 minutes. So by the time you have an issue with the start or any safety car at all, your laps are going to get cut down. So I think in general it was a really good opportunity and just a way to go racing, which was really good. And any time racing at Bathurst, let alone on the 1000 weekend, is very cool. But look, I think either way, both have their positives and negatives, and but I think it was a really cool experience either way.
Yep. Who's next?
I'll finish off the TCR side of it. I think ultimately, like, TCR needs to stand on its own 2 feet and be its own show. That was what we'd signed our sponsors up for at the beginning of the season. So I wholly agree with Lockie. It's like pretty disappointing that we didn't get our full race lengths in, and it was quite obvious that we were a support category, and there was no favors done there for sure. So I don't know. I've been a support category obviously with the 86s before, and know what it's like. So would have been nice if we got a little bit more preferential treatment, considering that it was kind of sold that ARG had kind of helped supercars to get the 1000 event going, and they'd worked together on trying to make the dates happen. But obviously the 1000 takes precedence. So I'm just looking forward to next year. Hopefully the whole COVID thing doesn't affect us, and we've got our Bathurst International with some of the European guys coming out, and I think, even just having one European in Chris Mees there this weekend was a big draw card for us. So if we can get, another 4 or 5, or we end up doing an enduro with a bunch of the Euro guys coming out, it just it makes the event so much bigger and adds another element to it. So bring on next year.
I say so. How about you, next one?
I sort of echo a bit of the sentiment of Lukey and Lockie. The schedule being so long, it made all of the supports really drawn out. Like to go out once a day, like for Trans Am, we had once a day and Friday off. It was like, well, if you want us to be a weekday category, put us on the weekdays and get it over and done with. We can go home and see our families for the weekend. Because it makes it a very long event when you're there, from Monday morning, and basically Sundays packing and loading. So, I like Luke, I'd probably rather see that we get our own time, or if you're going to put us on as a support of supercars, give us some decent weekend time in front of the main audience. I don't know, that was pretty hard for them, as ARG are not their regular. Are not supercars regular support category, so it probably was a bit of an odd event for the promoter to run and schedule. So I'm sure they did the best they could with what they had at hand and commercial agreements that they had. I mean, I know 86ers have a commercial agreement to run on the Sunday morning. Toyota pushes that pretty hard. So so there's more factors than just that, but I've heard a little rumor that although ARG is affiliated with supercars now, I don't believe that any Trans Am round will be on any supercar round next year. So so Lukey, that probably gives us a bit more priority. I'm assuming that TCR would therefore be in a similar sort of scenario as well. So but again, just rumors and an innuendo. So there is positives to be on the supercars though, because obviously from a sponsorship standpoint, should you get enough TV time on these big events like a Bathurst, you've got something more to sell. TCR is also being dubbed as one of the high level categories. So, they are probably more apt to stand on their own, so to speak, from a commercial standpoint. So,
I don't think Clay's going to have much to say here, because he's used to being a support category to supercars. That's 86 series down to a T. So
yeah, no, exactly right. Like, to race at the 1000 event, especially on the Sunday as well, it's always pretty cool. It's the 1000, it always has a special place in every racer, and to race at the event as well, it's like, it's our grand final of motorsport. So to race there, it's definitely pretty special. But it's the long days. That's they're the big ones, because for Wednesday we have 2 practice sessions, and then from Thursday to Sunday we've got 1 session a day. So they're long days, and especially on Saturday as well, where the race was called off. We only got half a lap of racing as well. So half a lap of racing is it's not ideal for sure.
Yeah. Well, we've had a very nice interview. We've gone a little over what I was expecting, since you guys had a lot to talk about, and I'd like to thank you guys so much for talking to me tonight and giving the viewers a bit of insight what it was like at the Bathurst 1000 weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed the race and you enjoyed talking to me tonight.
Thanks, Ayrton.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I think big congrats to Chaz and Walkinshaw and all the team for the 1000 weekend, because I think I don't know if I've seen as faultless weekend as what Walkinshaw had. So pretty happy for those guys, and Lee as well. Lee's been great to race with this year in TCR. So pretty happy to see them get up.
I don't think anyone will be unhappy to see Lee take a win. He's a pretty
Exactly
well
right.
respected and well liked guy in everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, he's been trying to do it for a lot of years, and he's come successful. And this is Chaz Mostert's second time winning it, so they're all pretty happy. And Walkinshaw deserve it for sure.
Yep,
Absolutely. Yep.
definitely.
So would we say that's our Bathurst wrap up?
I reckon.
I'll say
I'd
so.
say so.
Good.
Thank you, guys, and thank you to everyone who watched this tonight and continues to support watching my episodes of Grassroots Racer. And enjoy your night.
Thanks, Adam. Cheers,
Thanks,
boys.
guys.